let me tell you what I'm going to cover basically. It's how to deliver agile projects to aggressive dates. Okay, so that's it. So aggressive dates means that you're going to deliver them fast. We're not going to do anything like sacrificing quality or anything like that. We're actually going to not do like definitely not do any more estimating, definitely not do any more planning. It's not the traditional stuff. And we're not going to make anyone work harder. We are not going to make people work weekends. We're not going to say we're going to hit this date and then run over and over and over and over. We're just going to figure out how, for the very most important projects that you have, how to deliver on time to aggressive dates. Okay, so that's the promise. This is not every single project that you deliver will be delivered to an aggressive date. This is the most important ones because this is about it's about management and it's about making money. Uh, for a long time, I secretly called what I do, mostly to myself, benefits engineering. And I like that because I go, oh, it's all about benefits. And at heart, I'm a software engineer still. Nowadays, I think I've got to the point where I go, it's about making money. And that's not the only benefit, but when you focus around commercial benefits, it makes actually a lot of things better, especially if you're in a business that's maybe struggling a bit. So, um, you can all see my slides. I have to apologize because they don't look very serious. We have a picture, just in case you're wondering. People have got filthy minds, and they thought that that was like a biological looking output on the left there. It's an aggressive date. It's an angry fruit. And standing next to the angry fruit is an expensive leek. Um, and this is a metaphor, of course, both of them, aggressive dates, expensive leaks. Let me tell you, if I pointed in that direction, we have an ensuite over there in the corner of the house where the toilet leaked, and we didn't know it was leaking. But last time we got our quarterly water bill, it was twice as much as it ever had been before, and we realized we had a leak. And so it wasn't just water that was leaking. It was actually money that was leaking. And so a lot of this is about using aggressive dates to stop the money leaking out of your business. And at the very least, I got ChatGTP to give me a nice picture there. So that makes me happy. Right. Now, I'm going to move on because that's the non-serious view. Oh, hang on just a second. There we go. So this, if it has a different title, is the serious business, because actually it is really serious, of delivering agile projects on time, early, and very, very fast. Okay. And if I were to flip back to this flippant view, I would actually maybe call this the adventures of dollars and deadlines. So the two things going on here. Deadlines, this is our secret weapon. Not deadlines done badly, like they usually are. Deadlines done well. And this is all about how to deliver on time. And the output of that is dollars and often better products and often better workplace. Okay, we're moving on. I hope you're all appreciating how much effort I put into the animations here. Uh, that was about half the effort in writing this. Now, speaking of animations, this here is bullet points, right? So bullet points, apologize, the rest of the slides aren't bullet points, but I wanted to sum it up. And I figured it's easier if otherwise I could sit here and just read from a script. So we might as well read it together, but not out loud, thanks. So just make it clear. I think many of you know me. I've been doing Agile for a very, very long time. I think it is wonderful. It's one of the world's great, great, great innovations. And it's great at building working software. It's fast, it's flexible, it's put people first. Oh, what's not to love about this? It's focused mostly because the majority of people working in Agile are working in delivery. It's focused on the delivery problem, not the money problem. And that's kind of what we're going to look at. And one of the things that disappoints me, but I can totally get why people like this. Many Agile teams say we don't do deadlines. And here I am saying sometimes for very important projects, You should do deadlines. It's good for you. It's good for everyone and can actually be quite joyful when you do them. And we don't estimate value. Yeah, it's okay. I think you should, but probably not the way that involves lots of spreadsheet work. And we don't commit to ROI. And I actually agree with that one. I don't think any agile team should be trying to commit to ROI the way it might be implied there. And then the consequences is that projects run late, assuming that you're actually doing projects. Value leaks out. It's funny how every little bit we take a little bit longer, another nice feature, another fine tuning, the product gets better, but it doesn't actually make any more money. So sometimes money leaks out that way. There's lots of other ways it leaks. We'll come to those. And there, just I want a round of applause there for my beautiful bouncing league. Value leaks out, money leaks out. We lose money. That's what I'm saying when value leaks. It's a bad pun, but it's expensive leaks. We lose money. And if you're losing money and you're not in a very healthy, money-wise business, that can be really, really awful. And maybe the worst bit about this is that with this attitude here, which is totally understandable, which is that we deliver software without the strong commercial focus and without wanting to commit to dates, that freaks out a lot of executives. It makes them nervous, and it just basically erodes a lot of trust. We've got this magnificent system that we've built, Agile, the Agile mechanism, which allows us to deliver stuff on time, but we haven't used it. And so that's kind of what I want to do. This is going to sound really arrogant, and I think I've earned a little bit of the right to say this. Um, I think Agile has done a lot of magnificent stuff, but I think it can be better. And this is my contribution to try and make it better. Right, no more bullet points. Oh, credibility down the drain. Another leak kind of pun there. Money's leaking away. Now, I need to tell you a story that is kind of true. The numbers in it are true. I've just made it me look a bit stupider and the other guy look a bit cleverer. So many years ago, I had been brought into a company to rescue their big agile project. Lots of whiteboards, not a lot of working software. So I'd been brought in to rescue it. There were probably about 200 people all up working on this big, expensive project. And halfway through, we got it on track. It was looking really well. And I got some time with the CEO. So this is a person who had about 4,000 people working for him. And I thought I was really clever. So I went in and I said to him, "Oh, it's really interesting. Can I just can I ask you to imagine that you had a magic wand and you could wave it over top of your IT division? If you just had one wish, what would it be?" I thought I knew the answer. I was being, leading the witness. And he said, completely off, totally didn't expect this, better technical architecture. And at the time, I was really surprised because I thought he'd say, "Oh, I'd love it if you could just deliver all of your projects in 3/4 of the time. I'd get a lot more projects done. We'd make a lot more money," because his job, number one job, was to make more money. But he was interested in better architecture. And now I realize that if you are the CEO, you kind of think about there's two worlds. There's a small part of your business that makes money, and that's their job. And then there's another part that spends money. So when he said better technical architecture, he was thinking about, oh, what are we spending our money on with IT? And there was a big spend on technical architecture. So here I was thinking about making money, and that wasn't even in his radar. Okay, so I made this suggestion. Wouldn't it be cool if 3/4 of the time, that's quite a lot faster? Wouldn't you do that? And he just burst out laughing. Not quite as many ha-has as this, but burst out laughing. And he says to me, "You folk can't deliver projects on time. What makes you think you could deliver them sooner?" It was kind of like you have no credibility. And it was kind of like a bit, I'd just come in and help rescue all of this big, huge investment, turned it around, and I realized that it wasn't me he was actually talking about. He was talking about our industry. He was in his 60s at that stage, so he'd been working probably with projects for between 30 and 40 years, and he'd never seen them not overrun. Okay, so credibility was low. And he says, I don't know why I'm laughing. It's not funny because Project XYZ picks one out there. Yeah, Project XYZ was supposed to deliver 8 months ago, and you guys reckon it's going to take another 4 months. So 12 months late, right? That 12-month delay has cost me 20 million pounds. And I go, what? And he goes, well, if it had shipped on time when you said, we would have sold 20 million pounds worth of new XYZs, whatever that would mean. That's quite a lot of money. And we all know the concept of the cost of delay. I guess we're all familiar. We normally think of it in short, how long does a delay of a month take? He's going, a year's delay has cost 20 million pounds, money that the business would never get back again. It's a very expensive leak. We carry on. And he said, we needed that money, not just the 20 million, but also the money that they spent on XYZ to get to this point. We needed it. But we wouldn't have invested in XYZ if we'd known it was going to overrun this much. So he had other options. He would have done other things with that money. And then he says, worse, I crossed my fingers and I predicted that XYZ would only overrun by 6 months. So I publicly forecast that our profits would increase because of XYZ, and our share price went up because of that. And when I announce our results later on this year, they'll be lower than expected, and our share price will drop, and I'll look like a fool. But he didn't, of course, say fool. And then he says, our competitors are kicking our asses. You computer geeks are too slow. And all you ever give me is technical sounding excuses. And I've changed my mind. I want a new wish. My new wish is that you computer wizards figure out how to deliver your projects on time. Go figure out how to take deadlines seriously, nerd boy. That's me being a little bit authory there with the writing there. But that was basically what he said. And later, when we wrap this up, just so you know, I'm going to have a little Q&A when I finish the content bit, and then I'll tell you some of the results that I've got working this way, and that you can get by doing this stuff as well. But let me give you a little foreshadow of that. The next project delivered early, and made bucket loads more money because we took the deadlines very, very seriously. So this again is about taking deadlines seriously. Okay, right. So sorry for all of this build up here, but I want you to see here that this is not about stand-ups. This is not about extreme programming or pair programming. It's not about backlogs or backlog grooming or whatever the things are. It's about the commercial aspects of making money. And the best view from that is what the CEO looks from the outside, and what he or she will look at in any company is go, Agile. And sometimes they love Agile. So don't get me wrong. It's not every Agile project is bad. Some of them they look and go, oh my God, they're slow. Oh my God, our competitors, we're barely keeping up with them. That's the view they care about. Right. So our strategy is to take deadlines deadly seriously. And we're going to, now this is an important word here, and I'm conscious that my accent will, so please read the words that are number 2 there. My accent would just make them sound a little bit less polite sometimes than they could. So we have, no, I blush every time I have to say this out loud now. So we will stack the deck. We will cheat like you're doing at cards, right? I'm moving on swiftly from the awkwardness of that for me. We are going to, like, if you're playing cards with someone, if you stack the deck, you move the cards around. Sorry, I was going to, I'll have to move on quickly. You're going to move the cards around, you're going to set them up, so that you win. It's cheating. Um, you can understand why my next book isn't called that. Um, okay, so we are going to cheat, but in business, cheating, so long as it's legal, is good. And there's nothing here that I'm going to tell you that's going to make your stomachs turn. This is all good, practical, sensible stuff. But this is what we're doing. We're actually deliberately changing the game so that we can win. And the reason we're doing that is so that we stop losing so much money. Okay, right. Now I need to tell you about some really serious deadlines. During the American Civil War, you may have heard this one. I've only sort of seen it mentioned a couple of times. During the American Civil War, when they took prisoners, whoever they were, they would take them, they'd have their prisoners there, and they wouldn't have a prison. So what do you do when you haven't got a prison? You go get stones and you put it round where they're all inside their prison, and you make a fake wall with stones. And everyone looks and they go, ah, if I stay inside the stones, they won't shoot me. If I go outside the stones, if I cross the dead line, they'll shoot me. Okay, so inside this, the stones, there's red stones on the outside, you're safe. Outside, bang. Pretty gruesome, but that's where the name deadline came from. And over time, deadline sort of got pulled into journalism. So journalists started talking about having deadlines. And then over more time, it just got pulled into the office. And then over even more time, it became part of project management, building submarines and stadiums, and then software. And then over time, it became something that Douglas Adams sort of said, I love the sound when they whoosh by. So deadlines almost became very unserious. So we're going to take our deadlines very seriously. We're not going to shoot anyone, but we're going to take them very seriously so we don't have to. Okay. Now, please all note, I am a consultant. So here's a table with before and after. Okay. You can read them while you're watching, but what I want to do is point out three of the things in here. Obviously, on one side, there's delivering late. On the other side, there's this wonderful new world where you do the stuff I say and you deliver aggressively early. And so the first one is that when you deliver late, there's lost revenue. When your projects don't have, when your most important projects don't have an aggressive date, they take longer. There's nothing to push against. So they take longer and you lose revenue. And when you start using aggressive dates, uh, when you start doing them well, you earn more money. You pull the revenue earlier. Okay. Now, this is one that appeals to the software engineer that still lurks somewhere inside my brain somewhere. The amount of times I try and go, well, actually, I'm a computer scientist, to cling to some form of credibility. I reckon that when you are delivering late, if you've ever worked on a project which keeps going on and becomes a death march, it becomes incredibly stressful. Actions are taken whereby holidays are cancelled, weekends are cancelled, people are working long, long hours. It's very stressful. When we switch to working with deadlines and we start hitting them, and we don't do it in the way I'm going to describe, the teams actually can become quite a joyous experience. It can actually genuinely become joyful. One of my clients, some of the people in their team dialed in from a conference room to this the session I ran on this morning, and just in the last week, they don't actually even build. They got nothing to do with software. They make medical devices, and they have a factory, and they do product development. Switching to everything I'm about to tell you here, but adjusting it for the fact that they make real things that get shipped around the world. All of this stuff, they just suddenly go, wow, this is such a nice way to work. It's just really invigorating and everyone loves it and they're making a lot more money. Okay. So if you can do this, teams look and feel like heroes. And another bit that's probably important for many of you on the call, maybe not all of you, but if you can deliver stuff on time in a way that everyone likes and is joyful and profitable, then you're going to build a lot of trust with the executives and the leaders in your business. And then the next time they have a gnarly problem, they're going to come to you because you'll build a reputation for being a safe, inventive, clever pair of hands. Okay, so I think that's really, really important. And I know when I started thinking about this stuff, um, I found it a lot easier to pay off my mortgage. So there you go. There's a little personal incentive for everyone there. Okay, right. Now, this is where it gets exciting. This is where I stop promising you the earth and we get down to actually what you've got to do. So here I have how many? 13 cards. I knew that. So there's 13 moves that we need to do. And if you imagine if you had a deck of cards, there's 52 cards in them there. So this is not like everything that you have to do. This is just the 13 that I have found consistently. It's the same stories I tell to clients over and over and over and over again. And then I wrote them down and I organized them. And I'm not making this up. I suddenly had 4 columns. I'll show you the 4 columns. Mechanics, I like the mechanisms, the processes. I had the people. There's 3 things you have to do with people. I had curation, which is figuring out what you've got to do and what you've not got to do. Um, and trust. And I had 3 levels in each. And I was really, really surprised in this that it just sort of seemed to just fit there. And then I realized that there's it was almost like it was meant to be. And then I realized that if you had a deck of cards, each suit had 13, and I just felt like I was missing one. And it actually turned out to be the one I'm calling the wedge here, which is the ace up our sleeve. And I'll show you it in a moment, but I want to show you all of them. And then I'm not going to run through them. Well, I am going to run through them one by one, but I'm going to show them to you in a way that kind of where everything makes sense. And there's a few I need to focus on, and then the others become kind of obvious. So don't worry, it's not 13 lists of bullet points. So here's what they all look like. And next week I'll send everyone a link to the video and a cheat sheet that kind of goes through each of these as well. But I now hide them and I want to look at the first one. Because this is the wedge. And the reason I call it the wedge is think of a big rock. It's got a crack in it, and you get a wedge and you put it in it. And then you go bang, 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 and the whole thing splits apart. So this is the wedge card, and it sort of sets everything else up. And it is essentially just to pick an aggressive deadline. And then the rest of the cards, they will make the deadline. They take it from being aggressive and they make it easy. So let me just show you what I mean. So now imagine you had a project. You've got a project here. And everyone's gathered around. They've all looked at stuff. They've got an idea of what's involved, and they've sort of thought a bit about timelines, roughly when, and they have 2 dates in mind. And they go, well, some people go, if we got really lucky, April 1st, April Fool's Day, we could probably ship then. And the other ones go, oh yeah, but you know how things are, bad luck, never be too optimistic, December 1st. So on this chart here, we actually have 2 aggressive dates. One is the little animated fella there, and the other one is April 1st. So I'm calling them aggressive because this is this gut feel where people are just looking at it. They're not drawing this long-tailed I can't remember. Yeah, it's called a long-tailed distribution, I think. But in their mind, some of them are going aggressive. April 1st. Whoa, I suppose we could if we got really lucky, but that's like a really aggressive date. December 1st. Much easier. We should, yeah, definitely, no problem. So we're starting from that point and we're going, April 1st is an aggressive date, but December 1st isn't. But there's an awful lot of leakage between April 1st and December 1st. So now this is when the magic happens through the magic of animation. Just everyone lean in a little bit and watch this. Look at that. I'm glad you're all on mute because I didn't hear you go. Okay. So what we've done there is we've shifted that curve to the left. And that's what the coming 12 moves tell us, help us do. And as well as shifting it to the left, we're actually going to skinny that distribution up a bit. We're going to squeeze it in a bit. So what that means is we start with an aggressive date and we turn it into a non-aggressive date. It's the same date, but through some magic that's about to be revealed, most of which you already know, I imagine, it becomes an achievable date. So when the team sit down, they go, well, it was really difficult. We did some really clever stuff, and now we're going to hit that date. Excellent. So there's no stress, there's no pressure, there's no crossing of the fingers. It's now an achievable date. And there's some other stuff that there's also not. There is no more estimating needed. You don't need to sit down and come up with this very, 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 very detailed plan of what you're going to do to hit this date. You don't need to get people to work overtime. You don't need to get them on a death march where they start on, yes, April 1st. And then April comes along and they go, no, 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 June 1st. And then, no, 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 December 1st. And everyone's slogging away working on this. That's not our tactic. So all of those things that I've crossed out there, they are ways that we try and hit aggressive dates. We're not doing them. What we're doing is we are setting the teams up so that they run faster and in the right direction with far less rework and far less failure demand. And we're moving that curve to the left. And that is the magic. Actually, it's not really. That's what we're going to do. The rest is the kind of like the obvious stuff that we have to do. So if I just sum it up, April 1st was aggressive, and now it's not. That's what we've done. And that's how we pick our deadline. It's much easier for me to describe this than it is to do this in the real world because you have to talk to people and you have to have discussions and you have to figure out, then you have to talk about it and go, yeah, April 1st, that did feel aggressive. We do this other stuff. It's achievable. Right, now I've got to the point where I'm repeating myself. So why don't we go to the next card? So the next card is invert the pyramid. Now, if you've read my book, Rolling Rocks Downhill, you may remember at the midpoint, the hero goes, I figured out how to deliver my projects on time. And he discovers the inverted pyramid method, which is the method that, well, the approach really, method makes it sound more important than it is. Journalists use it to write their articles. Less so nowadays that they've got infinite space because of digital stuff. But imagine that you're writing an article and you know it's good enough, it's going to be on the front page, but you don't know what else is out there and how many column inches you're going to get. So you're sitting there, you're writing this article, and if you write it in the beginning, middle, end, and there wasn't enough space, that unless they shrunk the font down, they weren't going to better fit in the right space. So what journalists all around the world discovered how to do was invert the pyramid, and then make sure that the first paragraph, it's called the lead paragraph, has 80% of the information in it. Who, what, why, when, how, and the other one that goes with that. That very first paragraph, it's called the lead. And if that's all you read, and often that's all that people do read, they go, okay, I've got the sense of that story. And only then they would read further. And then this next paragraph, it tells you the next most important thing. So it's kind of like a prioritized backlog if you think about it. And then it's got the next most important thing, and then the next most important thing. So that if they get that much space, they chop the article off there. They get that much space, they chop it off there, and it still fits. So effectively, it's variable scope. So that's the inverted pyramid. It's kind of really obvious. Ask any journalist about it, and this is how they write their articles. This is the model for delivering agile projects on time. And these two cards kind of get you the 80% of the way there. So if invert the pyramid is the mechanism, and I'm just going to describe this. Now, I imagine all of this will make sense to you. There won't be any surprises here, but this is how you deliver agile projects on time, and the rest of it just make it even easier. So now, notice the date there, 2003. I put these slides together in 2003. Um, the first time I ever presented them. They've changed a bit, but there's still original 2003 stuff there. So you start by listing out your known requirements, and then you slice and dice them and prioritize them, and you set a bare minimum. So in other words, you kind of just make a backlog, and you figure out this isn't an MVP. This is the bare minimum commercial product that if you built it and you had to walk away, it would stand on its own. The MVP used to mean that 15 years ago. Nowadays, it means something different. So this is the bare minimum, right? So if this is a bicycle and you're building a bicycle, it's got a seat on it. Okay. It's got brakes, it's got the rest of it. It might not have a bell, but it's the bare minimum. And I think that's pretty kind of obvious. We all know this stuff, right? And then we pick our aggressive deadline, and then we stack the deck so it becomes what I would call a slam dunk. So it's no longer aggressive, cross your fingers and hope, yeah, we can hit that. And then we deliver chunks of well-engineered working software often. For many, like for probably 15 years, I used to repeat that line and then explain what well-engineered working software meant. And I don't think I need to do that these days. So we just build up chunks. And I'm sure you've all got an imagination that's enough here to go that these chunks could be, that we could build them up in hourly, we could build them up in weekly, fortnightly, whatever. We build them up in chunks of working software, and then we get to a point where we go, whoa, that's the bare minimum. We could actually release this now. That's pretty cool. We don't always get that. Sometimes we get unlucky. But we get to this, and if we do that, we can start selling it. We can start making some money. We can learn from the marketplace, see what people like, and then we can adapt if we want to, and start doing changes if we want to. We can use this time that's coming up to do whatever we want, fix things, improve them, add new features, and then whatever we decide to do, we just keep working until we hit the date. So effectively, what we've got here is good old-fashioned fixed date, variable scope. Okay, no surprises. So this isn't anything new. Everyone's going, oh yeah, that's good. And all the stuff that we talk about coming up next is about how to set it up so that this can actually work, because it involves some fairly grown-up discussions. So we ship on time, or even better, if we get to that date there, we go, oh, actually, we've delivered the minimum. Are we better to keep working on this one, or should we go work on the next project, the next most important one? Because we're halfway down the backlog here, lower value stuff. We could go work on the high value stuff on the next project. Okay, so again, I don't think there's any major surprises there. But that's the first two. Pick your deadline, take an aggressive date, and make it a slam dunk. And then we want to invert the pyramid, which is just prioritize your backlog and deliver chunks of working software. You've got a safe date, keep delivering until you either decide to finish early or keep working up to the deadline. Okay. I'm imagining none of you are experiencing major surprise here. But anyone who's been doing Agile for a long time says you can't do dates. A lot of them will say it's because, oh, well, the people won't. We know variable scope. That would allow us to hit dates, but we can't. Our customers, our bosses won't let us do that. So this is where you need to have the hard discussions. That's where we move to here. So this one here is now changing. Notice that we're now gone from the mechanics column, the stuff we all tend to love, to the stuff which is actually even more exciting, but it's really annoying because it involves people and trust, and rebuilding trust and having quite hard conversations often. So the first thing that we're going to do, the first discussion that we're going to have is how to under-promise and then over-deliver most of the time deliberately. Okay, so I have a little bonus card here, the explanation. So what normally happens is in projects, assuming people will actually commit to dates, if they do, what happens is someone who wears an expensive suit says, I want this on that date. It makes it very, very hard for the team or the people working for them to disagree or say no. So they get a date imposed on them. And then the team effectively is forced to overpromise and then they underdeliver. And then you have these rolling dates that keep going on and on and on. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip that, but we're not going to do it secretly. We're going to sit down, expensive suited person, the team, we're going to sit down and we're going to have a good grown-up conversation about how we can underpromise transparently and then almost always overdeliver. It's actually better for everyone. The CEO actually doesn't want you to run late and late and late. That makes him look or her look like a fool. They want you to be on time. They just don't want you to have so much time that you sit around and they want the aggressive date done well. Okay, so we underpromise and then we over deliver. And how do we do that? Well, most of the time, if we underpromise, we get luckier and we just pull stuff forward. Just like I showed you with the animation, we get lucky. Okay, we'll just pull stuff forward and we'll just start it earlier. This is so sort of blindingly obvious, but no one does it, and it's probably because of the next one, which is now I realize this rhymes, but it's a little bit of a mouthful. I'm going to have to explain it. So we co-create before we negotiate. You know, on the Agile thingy, it says we no, I won't go there. We co-create before we negotiate. So normally what would happen is this sort of even internal teams, there's this someone you're negotiating over a date and over scope, and someone gets the teams usually get forced into playing games and then over committing, over promising, and then they fail. So we need a culture, and this is one of those things that the move here is that you actually create a culture little bit by little bit by bit, where you build trust and you figure out how to work together and you co-create with the leaders, the delivery team. You come up with a date, you have grown-up discussions, you go, yep, that's aggressive. We've now made it easy. We need to do all of these things. We work together as if we're a team. So co-create, I love that word, but really it just means we collaborate. But what we're creating is collaboratively, we're creating at the beginning of a project a plan for how and a strategy for how we actually succeed. We're not having someone over here imposing something and then someone else trying to negotiate, playing games, and then ending up over promising, under-delivering, and then failing essentially. So those grown-up discussions all come from a culture change. That top one there is, if you see that's in the strategic layer, that is almost like the culture and the vibe of everything that you're trying to do here. So it's all about building and rebuilding trust. It's taking from a place where development teams don't trust. Oh, I like that cat, Jose. Yeah, good cat. Well behaved. Um, uh, sorry. So this is a big culture change, but the thing about culture change is if you just approach it from a point of view of building and rebuilding trust, it becomes a lot easier. And I genuinely was about to say, imagine that you see a cat, and then a cat arrived on the screen just moments before that. Imagine you're walking on the street and you see a cat. And you go, I haven't seen that cat before, but the cat looks kind of vaguely interested. So you walk over and you don't rush up and try and grab the cat and then rub it on its belly. You walk up gently and you hold out your hand. And maybe the cat sniffs Oh, he's a good cat there. And the cat sniffs your finger, and then maybe a moment later, you rub it on the head, and then maybe it brushes its face against your hand, and then a moment or two later, you're rubbing it on the chest, and then the next time you go out walking, you see the cat, it rushes over to you, and because you've built trust. So much about of this is about having grown-up conversations where you rebuild trust. And I'm deliberately saying rebuild because the trust level in a lot of teams, the trust that a lot of delivery teams have of their managers is very low. So that's what we're trying to rebuild here. And then once you've got that culture in place, um, everything gets easier. It's just like putting oil on a machine. Right, now I'm going to speed up a little bit because we've covered that's the groundwork. Now, this one here is just if you were actually only going to do one thing, it forces you to do everything else here. If you've got a whole lot of projects on the go and you've got one that's really important, then you make it your VIP, your very important project, and you change the entire system so that it is treated as first class and everything else is treated as third class. So just think if you had a presidential motorcade, I think they call them. You've seen them on the TV, and they got all of the 4x4s and a limousine, and they totally disrupt an entire city so that this one limousine can race through the city quickly. If you've got a VIP project, a strategic project that's more important than everything else, and so often you do, then you break the rules and you mess up the traffic for everyone else. And it might seem unfair, but this is about business and this is how you win. Important project, you make it treat it like it's really important. That's one scenario where you create the critical lane. The second one is the analogy would be if you've got a motorway or a freeway and you have an emergency lane that runs along the side of the road so that you've got most traffic stuck in gridlock or just crawling along, and then you've got an emergency vehicle, a fire engine or an ambulance, and they get to use that and they get to race by. So one of the most important things here is that you figure out what your critical projects are. If there's one massive one, then turn everything else upside down and treat it like the limousine. Or if you've got a couple, and maybe you have 10 active projects, you go, these two are the most important, and you prioritize them above everything else. And almost some free consulting advice. If you hired me in as a consultant, this is almost always the first thing that I would get you to do. Big whiteboard, just say, yellow stickies, put all the projects on, prioritize them, whatever may make sense until you find one or two that are the most important, and then slow everything else down and focus on those two. And what you will find is that you will make bucket loads of money, and effectively your aggressive dates become just so easy for those ones. And the other ones sit like traffic on a motorway, gridlocked because they're far less important than the fire engine that needs to race by. Okay. Now, we debottleneck your leaders. So just imagine a situation. I'm going to do this reverse psychology kind of way. Just imagine you've got a leader. They've got loads and loads of time, right? Loads of time. They're sitting down there. They're staring at their walls. They're thinking strategically. And then they do all sorts of stuff. They've got whiteboards. They have meetings. They do this. And then one day in the shower, they've got it, the strategy. That's all just comes together. They rush into get dressed, they rush into work, say, here we go, here's the strategy. I'm so glad I had all that space to think. Here it is. The development team will be able to look at this and then turn it into whatever software stuff that they need to deliver it. And they all know that this is the right strategy because the leader wasn't bottlenecked and they had time and space to think. Or if I say that another way, they had time and space to lead. So if I could ask you to imagine a Venn diagram with three circles on it, and every leader has three things they do. One is that they have expertise, one is that they manage things, and another one is that they lead things. And imagine the leadership on top. When you take a leader and you give them more and more responsibility, you would think that they would move up and focus on leadership. But usually what happens is when they get more responsibility, they sacrifice. The second thing they sacrifice is leadership. The first thing is their home life. And what you end up with when you get overworked, bottlenecked leaders is that everyone that works for them is waiting for decisions. So there's two bits here. The first bit is that because they don't have time, I'm going to start with the bottom one and sabotage strategy. Because they're so busy, they don't have time to get the strategy right. They give it to the team works on it. They then realize that it's wrong and they have to rework it. If they have more time to think and get really clear on where they're going, they prevent all that rework. Or they actually, I won't go more on that. The other one is that they end up delaying decisions. So no one, I think, thinks of it this way, and I didn't until recently. If you imagine like in a factory and that you go, oh, there's our machine over there, and it's a bottleneck. You can tell because there's a whole queue of stuff there in front of it. Now, if you could imagine that instead of email, everyone that sent an email to previously to the boss had to write it out and then stand in a queue outside their office. Here's the communication. I need to talk to you about this. Done some thought. What do we do? Um, why I'm saying that is that if you could see them, it is the equivalent of what their inbox is, except it's invisible. So what happens is leaders, and every leader does this, they're so busy, they don't answer questions fast enough. And the leaders that are reporting to them then start new stuff while they're waiting, whip increases. And then the leaders under them start new stuff. And you get just basically everyone's inbox is this massive pile of unanswered questions. So we all know we don't like whip. Uh, and this is leadership whip. I'm going to move on from this, but that's really important. You need to debottleneck your leaders. And if anyone hasn't read any of my bottleneck books, email me or message me somehow, and I will send you a copy of them. And it kind of runs through. It'll help you think about bottlenecks. Just on that one, I spent the last much of COVID, about 4 years of it, taking one leader who's had 30 people and growing from being a bottleneck to not being a bottleneck to growing to the point where she had about 400 people reporting to her. And it was all just this process of repeatedly debottlenecking. She would grow, we debottleneck again. And it can be done, but you have to do it deliberately. Okay. Love to tell you more about that because it was pretty cool, but dollarize the price. This one, I'll explain this one by example. But the point of it is that if you don't know why you're doing your project and what money you're chasing, however inaccurately you might estimate things, which is absolutely fine. If you don't know what you're chasing, you're going to be, who knows what your software is going to do. So you need to look at what you're working on and go, how does this make money? How does this save money? How does this act as an insurance policy by doing this? And when you ask those questions, some really interesting things happen. And I've just seen this so many times that almost every time people look at it and when they just discuss why, as a business, are we doing this and try and put dollar signs on and just really rough estimates, they suddenly realize that they were going to go that way and yet they should have been going that way. It's just over and over and again. This just gives huge clarity. Why TF are we doing this? Now, there's a whole, I'll probably run more sessions and stuff over the year. This one's really, really, everyone, when they do this, they're thinking of CFOs um, doing scenario planning with spreadsheets and stuff. This is not, it doesn't have to be like this. This is discussion, trying to figure out how do we think we're going to make money by doing this. So the example I was going to give you was a long time ago, 2016, 17. This is the best example because the numbers are ginormous. I took over an Agile project, which had kind of been started, and it was for a big bank, and I was working with a vendor. And as I came on, they got a new program manager, and it was a really, really huge project for everyone involved. And then the project, but it was only about £1 million worth of cost to the bank. And then new program manager comes in and goes, "Oh, I'm going to add some value here. I'm going to go back and negotiate 10% off the price." And they came back and said, "Well, we want 10% off. We want to reduce the price by 100,000." And everyone got in a flurry. 100,000, 100,000, what can we do? 100,000, they won't pay this, won't pay this, won't pay this. And it came to me as the project manager. And I said, "Oh, I don't know. I don't know." So I went and talked to the technical architect, who was very, very wily. And he said, "Fuck off." He said, "Go away politely. Um, Tell them to, no, get back to work." And I go, I just can't do that." And he said, 100,000. Do you have any idea how much money this will make a week once it goes live? This thing. I don't know. And now I must admit I can't remember if he said a day or a week. It doesn't really matter, right? And I'm saying that because I have a funny feeling if I publish both recordings, I may have said different things this morning than I say now. But he said, "How much money a week?" And I go, "Oh, I don't know." And he goes, "Let me explain it." And he sat down and he dollarized. He put in dollar terms, pound terms, what they were hoping to achieve. And it was £1 to £5 million a week extra profit once they went live. And they were trying to save 100,000. Can you feel like if you wanted to play Trivial Pursuit, it doesn't get much more trivial, even though that sounds like a lot of money, 100,000. So when that became clarified, we had a little chat with the salespeople, and they went and had another chat with the program manager's big cheese, who told the program manager to go do some program management. Um, okay, so this is why dollarizing, understanding what you're trying to achieve is really, really hugely important. And I know it turns people's stomachs, but putting dollar signs on it with really rough numbers, just so you can understand what people are, why they're doing it, almost always changes the direction. Okay, now chase the espresso. This is when I'm going to give you an analogy here, and it's you've already seen this. It's effectively my way of explaining the Pareto rule, or that idea that we saw when we talked about, well, when I talked about inverting the pyramid of finding a bare minimum. So I'm not going to belabor this, but I usually tell when I'm working with clients that this one kind of blows their minds away. And I'm sure you've all had the same experience when you first learned about the 80-20 rule. And it's kind of like that. I remember I got brought in to work with a whole bunch of it was a government department, and they weren't trying to save jobs, they were trying to actually cut jobs because their budget had been cut and they needed to get rid of, I don't know how many, it was dozens of staff. And so they were spending millions of dollars to automate a whole lot of previously manual stuff. And they got me in because their project had been running for 3 years and it just felt like it was never going to finish. And just when I say project, this was a project with lots of little projects in it, with about 30 people, software developers working on it. Come in, I look at it and I wander around and I just get this funny, funny feeling, which I couldn't get anyone to pin down. I go back and I talk to this very senior civil servant and I say to her, "Hey, look, I just got this funny feeling." And I go, "Oh, look, let me explain it by analogy. Imagine if you woke up in the morning and you were really tired and you walk past the Starbucks and you go into the Starbucks and what you really want, you just want caffeine, right? But if you wanted to, you could go into the Starbucks and you could order a coffee with some espresso, some syrup, some whipped cream, some foaming stuff in it. In New Zealand, but bizarrely, you get a chocolate fish, and no one knows why. Um, and you get all of this stuff, and then what you've got is this huge, fantastically expensive, sugary drink. And yet, actually, what you really want is the caffeine that's in the espresso. And I said, I think that all of your teams there, when they're working on the projects, they're doing this. I think they are, and it's because they think their job is to build the best software product, but that's not what they're chasing. They're chasing your espresso is reducing the number of FTEs, full-time equivalents. It's automating stuff to get rid of people. But they think they're building really nice, snazzy software. She says, oh no, that's nonsense. And then the next morning I come in and I meet her there. She's in the room with the IT director with a Starbucks cup pointing out. And she looks at me, she says, I went around and every single team is building a lot more than they thought they would. They thought they were doing a good job. So we're just going to reset that. And that's a little bit unpalatable sometimes when you cut it right back. So when I tell people about this, I think it's really important that you go, hey, look, espresso is actually unpalatable. It probably means that you're building a horrible product no one's proud of. So why don't you just put a little bit of extra hot water in it and a little bit of milk, and it would be a lot more palatable for people. So if you think of the bare minimum scope, that's only when you get really, really unlucky. You want to keep adding just a bit more to make it palatable. And if you get really, really, really lucky, you add even more and more and more. Okay. That one there, when I've told teams that story, it becomes part of their vocabulary. And they are really blown away by that idea. I don't tell them about 80/20 stuff, but they're blown away by that idea. And it's a really nice shortcut for them to think about, is this espresso? Is it stuff to make it palatable, or is it fluffy cream stuff? Okay, right. To make that work, you need the unicorn, which is the magical phase two that everyone knows exists, but no one has ever actually seen. So this is in the trust column. What you have to do if you're a leader, if you want people to actually chase the espresso, they have to know that if they have bad luck, that there's a phase two. So they're going to go live, hit the date, and then they keep adding stuff. Without the phase two, they will bloat. Their bare minimum will have a lot of, when you get a package for someone and it's got a little tiny thing and it's full of those plastic peanuts, packing peanuts, it will be the minimum will be loaded with packing peanuts. And no one will be able to tell the difference between them. Like with that government department, it wasn't until they actually went in and they go, wow, there's a lot of fluff in here. Okay, so that one's really, really handy. And when you add it, it adds trust and it makes the everything here talking about scope a lot easier. Right. Now, hire agile coaches who get projects. So if you're going to say we're going to do projects, and you go to your agile coaches, go, oh, we don't do projects. You go, well, we're not going to do projects, but this thing has to hit the shops before December 1st. Otherwise, we'll miss the Christmas thing and we wouldn't do it. And if they say, well, we don't do dates, find someone who can do agile coaching who also understands the world of projects and move those other people somewhere else, possibly to a different employer, probably to a different team. And I don't say this lightly because I do not like the idea uh, of saying get rid of people. But I've seen a lot of people, not a lot, I've seen some people who are so dogmatic about their agile purity that they actually they sabotage their company without realizing that they're doing it, and they make it just worse for everyone. So yeah, take that one. I think it's very important. Again, if you imagine a Venn diagram, they've got agile and they've got project management, but they happen to be really, really strong on the agile, and but they get and they buy into the idea of the commercials and the commercial realities. So It's the same with project managers. If you don't have a project manager and you've got a really important project, hire a project manager, but make sure that they get agile. It's the same Venn diagram, but they excel at the project management, but they get agile. So they know how not to do stupid things, thinking that they're clever things that just mess up and mess with the heads of people working in the agile team. That's quite easy to do, but for some places um, the idea of having a project manager is just repugnant to some people. And that's really, talk about waste and leakage of money. That's devastating. Right, I've got two more. I'm not going to go into details on this. I'm just going to tell you, you right place your team's bottleneck. And what that means that is in your teams, you make sure that you have a deliberate strategic place for your bottleneck, which is your developers. You do not want your developers being starved of work from upstream because the bottleneck is their product people, their UX people, their business people. You want the people upstream to have tons of time to do stuff. And testing, if you have manual testers, you don't want the developers to have the choice of to have to sit in theory waiting for testers. You want them to have testers to be fast and give them fast feedback. And that's why we spend so much time and money automating tests, because it gets rid of our testing bottleneck. So if anyone's interested in that, I've got a whole talk on that somewhere on YouTube. Um, it's I genuinely think it's my greatest contribution to society, but I haven't been able to convince everyone to do it yet. But when you do it, it makes a massive difference. Right, last one, front load the risk. Imagine you're in an aeroplane and you're flying into Wellington Airport, which I'm sure you all know is one of the windiest airports in the world. And it's quite a short runway and it has terrible weather sometimes. And if you're flying in and you've got a whole bunch of passengers on board and the weather's bad, you'd probably be sensible to try and land the airplane at the beginning of the runway, where, because it's risky and sometimes things go wrong, if they do go wrong, you've got plenty of time and space ahead of you to recover. So what this is about identifying your risks and not just putting them in a risk register and going, oh, we've identified our risks. They're in the risk register. And then when it goes wrong, go, oh, that's great. That was in the risk register. You either look at the risks and you get rid of them, or you pull them forward and you make the aeroplane land when the beginning of the runway, where it's much easier to fix them, and much cheaper and much safer. And that's that. Okay. Would you all believe that we are going to finish on time? But we're going to have a phase two. So what we're going to do is have a little question bit here where we can talk through these. If you've got any questions and you'd um, like to ask them, and I will try and bluff my way through the questions, and then in about 14 minutes, I'll switch and I'll give you three examples of where I've done this. Although I didn't realize I was actually using this model at the time, except for the last one. And I'll just talk you through so you got a sort of a sense of that it does actually work in the real world. And then because I'm a consultant, I will blatantly and transparently suggest that if you've got a really expensive problem, you should give me a yell, and perhaps we talk about things and you hire me to help you. But that said, um, everything here, I think most people can apply them. Just sometimes it's better to have a little bit of insurance. So that's my sales pitch if you didn't pick up on the sales pitch there. Any questions? Or hang on, we've got a whole lot of stuff there. The easiest way to do the questions is you got two choices, either just if you've got a question or a disagreement or anything like that, just come off, turn your microphone on and talk, or type something into the thing. I'm going to go back one slide. Oh, hang on. Well, just so before you go, there's the before picture. There's the after picture. Okay, so that's what's coming up. There we go. Thank you, Bruce. Good idea. Let's have a look what we've got. Dan, did you want to come on?
Sure. I was
Go.
just being snarky though.
No, that's good. I read it and then I kind of, but I've been watching your face. You're very expressive. So I've had entertainment going in the other direction.
Good,
Yeah,
good.
that's good. Thank you. Yeah. What are you thinking there?
Yeah, I mean, these are tools that I've applied. So this was really helpful to kind of codify some of the things that I've done in these cases and also see some gaps where I haven't systematized it to put them all together. Um, but especially the one that really stuck with me where I added a lot of personal notes was dollarize the prize.
Hmm.
In my last program, that was critical, just constantly people arguing about $1,000 decisions when we were talking about billions in revenue
Yeah.
and just getting distracted on those. And
Yeah.
it was,
So easy.
I don't know that we totally fixed it, but
Hey, look, if you can't fix everything, but if you can make it 50% better or halve it, fantastic. That's a big improvement. Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Okay, I'm just going to note there, Robbie's dropping off. That's cool. Thank you, Robbie. Yeah. Cool. Any other thoughts or questions? Is there anything that you'd like me to? Now, I realize that that's a big brain dump. Um, so if there's any questions, feel free. Otherwise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send out a cheat set sheet with this, and I'll send out the recording. How about Rodrigo sitting down there smoking a pipe? Man, look at you there.
I know,
Are,
right?
are you in Amsterdam at the moment?
Yes, I'm in Amsterdam.
Excellent. You kind of look like you are actually. Yeah. Cool. What's going on? What you thinking?
Actually, I just want to. I mean, the dollar is the price thing is really crucial. And I'm currently sort of in the middle of discussion between like essentially different priorities, and people talking a lot about it. And that was something I was thinking of, and it makes a lot of sense. Like, there's like this project. Well, I won't bore you with details, but essentially, dollarizing each of the possible priorities could make a difference and make us choose the right things to focus on, even though we could be paying more for it. We could, well, not more. We could be paying a lot for something else. But it doesn't matter if what we choose to do earns us
Pretty
more
funny.
than that.
Because just trying to put numbers on that, although you almost never get the actual numbers right, just talking about them takes them from being qualitative discussions to quantitative, but not like rigorously
Yeah,
scientifically.
it's not abstract anymore, right? So
Yeah,
given an order of magnitude, it's usually more than enough.
yeah, and as you
Like
just
Dan was saying, like, discussing $1,000 here, but I have billions on the shelf somewhere.
yeah. It's really interesting when people understand how the thing's supposed to make or save money, how they do
Yeah.
things differently.
But actually, so having said that, that was just a hook from the conversation just having. There was a lot of conversation in the chat about phase two, the mythical phase two, which never happened. So I'd
Mm,
like to hear a bit of your thoughts about. And I'm a big advocate for cutting the scope early on, but like as long as we have phase two, and that goes even like the common saying in Agile, if like release early, release often kind of thing. Yeah, you only release often if you do release often. Like, well, otherwise, just have crappy first versions of everything,
yeah.
and you never commit to anything in the longer term. So, how would you prioritize that? And someone mentions that, like, rightly so, that often once you've done the first release of some project, then something else becomes priority, and then you move over there, and then something else, and move there. And you never get back to that to phase two of anything, and this
That's a
never
really
happens.
good point. I was surprised because in this morning's session, Unlock Phase Two was the one that actually sparked I can see your faces. It sparked, and I've been sitting here looking at the thing scrolling by, wondering what you were all chatting about, and wondering whether my fly was down and the I couldn't tell. But so it was Phase Two. Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, now I've just bluffed there while I let my mind catch up with coming up with a wise answer. So maybe one thing is that so this is about trust, remember? So this is having trusted conversations that if I've got this thing, you're not gonna you're gonna say I have phase two, and then when it comes to phase two, you're gonna take it away. So maybe the thing that needs to be discussed around this is actually it's that top one, co-create before negotiate. It's actually sitting down having the conversations before about how they work together in a trustworthy way. I'd almost I love the word co-create, but I almost just say, look, focus on building trust. And like everyone accepts that sometimes things are going to happen in phase two, doesn't happen. Um, but if you have discussions about when that might be applicable at the beginning of a project, then it makes people go, oh, okay, yeah. And then they have the thing they go, oh, well, actually, most of the time we're going to get lucky and we're going to get more than the bare minimum. But if we get unlucky, would that be a really good time to say that we actually get a guaranteed phase two? Because otherwise, it's probably not a very good product. So it is actually about having more than anything else. It's about having the conversations about how they work together. Yeah. I realize that all of this stuff lies on having quite grown up, difficult conversations. And almost, if you've already got all this stuff in place, you've probably already had those conversations and you've got high trust. So much about this is actually like that cat building trust bit by bit by bit. And if people can destroy trust really, really quickly by not keeping their commitments. So everyone has to work really, really hard to build and maintain trust. So and trust can actually it, it it can come from the top down or it can come from the bottom up. But often the place where it's actually easiest to build trust is from the middle out. So what I'm thinking there, I'm looking at the diagram here, I'm going project managers and agile coaches. They're the ones that walk around, talk to everyone. And project managers are usually better at dealing with leaders and external people. Agile coaches or senior scrum masters, or whatever you want to call them, are usually better at working with the teams. So if you start with those two roles, um, they are a really, really, really powerful place to start to build trust. And then over time, it becomes easier to get phase two as an accepted thing. And most of the time, you may not need phase two straight away. So I mentioned I'm working with this company that does medical devices. Their phase two is actually going, hey, look, going to do phase one now, and we're not going to go straight into phase two, but we're actually scheduling into a thing that every quarter we will have some phase twos. And it's just like the enhancement projects. Yeah, so there's loads of ways of slicing and dicing this, but it's the hardest thing to give advice on something like this, but it is all about thinking about that cat. How as a team you build trust with each other so that in your meetings you can rub each other on the tummy, metaphorically.
Interestingly, like I often do essentially the opposite of trust, which is like internally, like in the team or in teams, whatever, playing like phase one and phase two, essentially like drops, releases,
Yep,
but telling upper management that, oh, this is all phase one. Like,
yep,
phase one is these two things. And so we internally we get it, well, we get the time for it because it's the
yeah.
release. We'll
That's
just release her, like we release the important stuff first and then like internally understand like phase two enhancements
yeah,
gets delivered as well. Because
yeah. That's one of those game playing things that you kind of have to do. It would be much nicer if you had a high trust environment. So
yeah, exactly. That
do it.
I don't like that at all, but that's what works or seem
Yeah.
work.
So maybe just over time, it's just it was almost like so often so much of the stuff that I do is the stuff that I couldn't do when I was younger, as I now coach people on how to have those more difficult conversations. And it recurringly it's just that idea of building trust bit by bit, not rushing up and trying to fix everything and scare the cat away. It's just over time, build the relationship. Hey, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch back, show you this other stuff so that we finish on time. And then we're going to come back to phase two, funnily enough, of the Q&A. Okay. And that way, if you everyone here will have got the big bang for the buck. And then if you want to hang around, I'll turn the recording off, and we can just have a bit more of a casual chat if you want to. Okay, now I'm conscious that many of you probably actually have a job that you're trying to do, whereas it's 9:30 here. Okay, so let me come back to this. So there's the questions. There's the before picture. Look how grumpy and sad they are. And look how happy they are. That's all you need to know. Except it's not, of course. Remember this guy? Better technical architecture. Oh, how wrong he was. Roll forward sometime later, and I never actually had this conversation with him. But this is the conversation that we should have had. He should have called me into his office because we've just done another big project. Their second successful Agile project. First one I come in to sort it out. This was their second. This was amazing because it actually launched a month before the deadline. Can I ask you to cast your minds back to the prison, the the stones that became a deadline, the Civil War, and I had two lots of stones there. I had another lot of inside, and they were like the stones that they were kind of like, as you're getting close to the deadline, I'd sort of get there and I'd maybe step away in case someone thought I was too close to the line, and they shot me. So it's kind of like by analogy. There's absolutely no harm in finishing a project early. In fact, it's really, really, really good. So the nature of the promise that I talked about, over promise and under deliver. No, another one. No, don't do that. Under promise, over deliver. If you make that more practical, what it is come up with a date where you're not going to deliver on time. You're probably going to deliver early. So that's what we did with this. And the thing I love about this, just from a personal point of view, is when I wrote my book, Rolling Rocks Downhill, that was kind of like the punchline. It was a twist in the book, where it's like, wow. And I was just so proud of myself. And I had never seen that. I wrote that as fiction. I'd never seen in the real world a sizable project finish early. And then this project, I worked on it, but the guy that was running it, he tried to cancel Agile midway through it. He just really, really didn't get this, and it was just really unpleasant for everyone. He got told to do Agile, and then some people went off and they actually read my book, which had just been published. And the next thing I know, the first time in the real world, I saw a project that actually delivered 1 month early. And I don't know what that made them, but people, that guy, a while later, someone came up to me and sat and I said, got to tell you about that guy. And I won't say his name. That guy there, he's amazing. He just really got that agile stuff. He's so good. It's just amazing. And I'm sitting there going, oh, that was me. I didn't say anything. He said, you know, that project, it took delivered early. And I'm making up numbers here. It's like maybe it was 10 months. It took 10 months. We thought that would take 2.5 years. So this work, we started with the aggressive date and then we cleared things out, and we made it work. And so it finished, who knows, 4 months, 6 months, 12 months earlier than anyone ever expected. And it actually finished before the date. So they were delighted by this. Okay, now the reason I'm telling you this is because I'm amazing and because I want you to think about not delivering stuff on time, but delivering it early. And if that was actually what your promise was, that's really freaking amazing. It changes everything in your mind if you suddenly go, I deliver on time or preferably early. Okay, now I don't want to belabor that, but just let that fester in the back of your head for a long time. Okay, here's another one. this was actually the one that had the million, what was it, the trying to save 100,000. Um, that vendor, I didn't set up that project. I came in and I ran it. And I turned an aggressive date into an achievable one. Um, but this one, the big change with this is that the vendor, this big bank, had to work with this. So that the bank had to work with this vendor, and they hated each other. And then suddenly they delivered this project with this really aggressive date, chasing huge dollarized numbers, and it just went so smoothly after the first 6 weeks. At the 6 week point, there was this where they landed the airplane early. We kind of almost like had this disastrous thing that would have either ruined the project or proved it, and we had to do it. The moment that we ignited that bomb, and it went successfully, the project was just smooth for the rest of the time after that. And this big bank, which had only ever worked with this vendor reluctantly, suddenly added them onto the preferred supplier list and gave them loads more work. And the funny thing is, they went from hating each other to suddenly really liking each other. And it was just such a transformation. So that's kind of that, when you think about it, makes it all, I don't care about their money. I don't care if a bank makes another 150 million or whatever other number I happen to have made up at the top there. But turning the culture around between a vendor and their biggest customer, and making both sides just delighted with each other, is why it's worth doing this. And now the last one, and I have less than a minute to go, so we finish. We're used to working on 10 projects at a time. We now focus on two, because we've got this VIP lane, and it makes no sense, but we're doing less projects, but we're delivering more projects. We're making more money, more fun, better coffee because we can afford it, and we've got better jobs. Okay, right. Now, I'm still going to finish on time here, looking at the clock. Want to deliver faster? Next week, I'm going to send you a cheat sheet. The best way to do this is to pick the top 5 moves that help. And if you want to really cheat on it, just figure out how to do the VIP, the critical lane. Just figure out what project, what vehicle you would put on that critical lane, and then do that. If you want to help, and this is a genuine offer, I genuinely mean this. If anyone would like to help, we can chat for 30, 60 minutes. There's no invoices, nothing like this. I chat to a lot of people. I don't charge. I have great fun talking to people and helping them, and it makes me very happy. If any of you wanted to do that, just shout out. But I won't make a sales pitch during that chat. But if at the end of it you go, holy crap, this is like climbing Everest, it'd be really handy if we had a guide, then you might ask me if I have any time spare. And that would be my sales pitch. And I believe I'm 1 minute late. Oh my God. There we go. That's it. I am going to switch the recording off.